And for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to each of the witnesses for participating today. President Biden and Democrats in Congress continue to push the false narrative that there are leases available out there that oil and gas companies are just choosing not to use. President Biden said that there were 9,000 unused permits available that could be accessed at any time. This false number was abused by the Democrats until they realized they couldn't defend it anymore, and they began to use the 6,000 number. When Director Stone Manning from the BLM was here a few months ago, she kept referring to a statistic of some 6,000 or so unused oil and gas leases, suggesting the BLM and Department of Interior had done their part and that it was up to these companies to do theirs by using these old leases without issuing any new ones. Commissioner Novotny, can you dispel this myth for us? Explain where the idea came from and why it is so important that we are able to continue to lease.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hageman, I really appreciate this question. And as this administration has rallied about this ever-changing number, the honest fact is it's just not 9,000. The facts are that in Wyoming, many of these approved permits are unable to be developed because they are on leases that are being litigated by environmental groups. We're talking about millions of acres of litigated leases. In other cases, operators may only have one approved permit, but would like to pad drill, and that's several more wells at a time. And pad drilling specifically means drilling more than one well off of that footprint. And instead of spending millions of dollars to move a drilling rig, you can save costs and produce a greater area. It's just good business practice. Not being able to pad drill can severely harm the economies of a drilling program, which brings up a larger point. The number of approved federal permits at any given time is only a small portion of the bigger development picture. Companies have to balance what they believe is the productivity of the quality of the rock with those commodity prices, because let's face it, oil and gas, these are commodities. They're sending out what we call authorities for expenditure to find those investors to determine how much of that $10 million that it could be needed to pay up front to produce that. And they are securing surface wells, surface use agreements, access agreements for those pads and those locations, and securing rights of way for transmission lines, pipelines, and others. They are negotiating gas agreements and multi-million-dollar contracts with rig operators. They are determining whether the summer drilling program will be a single well or 50 or 500. They are juggling wildlife stipulations, especially as you and I know in the state of Wyoming with sage grouse, plus seasons and weather. They are juggling thousands of factors determining when and where they're going to drill. According to the BLM, in April there were 6,443 approved and 4,851 pending. In April, there were 1,972 approved permits and 496 pending permits in Wyoming. And today, we only have 20 active drilling rigs.
Okay. Well, I appreciate those statistics and that information. You also have highlighted that just how significant a single well has on your county, citing up to $400,000 in tax revenue in a single year. This tells us either that the Biden administration is unaware of how significant oil and gas is to our state, or they simply don't care. In your opinion, why does this administration insist on exporting our economy and our jobs to other nations that do something that we can do better?
I have, Mr. Chairman, Representative, I have no explanation for the decision of this administration to be so anti-oil and gas. These are good-paying jobs in the trade industry, jobs that my grandfather was able to enjoy and send his kids, the first in his family, to go to college. These are wonderful jobs that produce the revenue and the resources that fund our American economy.
And I appreciate that as well. Deputy Director Ned deflected from answering my questions regarding how this administration's policies have created serious energy poverty and the fact that their favored unreliable energy resources rely on child labor in places like the Congo, by claiming that he didn't know what I was talking about or hadn't researched it or hadn't looked into it. Don't you agree that the BLM, in pursuing these radical policies, should make even a rudimentary effort to get an understanding of the consequences of their decisions?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hageman, absolutely. My constituents are facing a 30% rate increase on their energy production when we are retiring perfectly good coal and gas-fired power plants within the state of Wyoming and across this country. As we wait for that next-gen nuclear facility to be built near Kimmer, Wyoming, we are stifling our economy. We are taxing our folks directly and indirectly through inflation and regulation out of house and home and their ability to sustain themselves. Oil and gas leads the way, and we can do it domestically appropriately that protects the environment, protects wildlife, and ensures for future generations that we are a successful nation.
Seems like that this administration has a different agenda in mind. Thank you, Mr. Novotny. Thank you to all of our witnesses. And I yield back.